Good morning. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to do another metal project today. I had an order. The bracelet that's in the thumbnail is actually the most expensive piece on my Etsy site, and I got an order for one. So I need to get it made. And honestly, it's not that difficult to make. It doesn't take that much time. The money in this piece is the silver, because silver is very expensive now. And as you can see in that picture, there's a lot of silver in it. So um, that's where we're getting the cost on this piece. So this is what my silver looks like when I first get it. I'm going to take some of this plastic off. This happens to be 22 gauge silver, which by itself I would probably not make a cuff bracelet because it is somewhat bendable, but we're going to put a spine on that piece. I'm going to cut this out. This is the actual feather that we're going to use, and just like a feather has, this is going to have a spine going down the middle of it, and that's going to strengthen the piece. So 22 gauge in this case is perfectly fine. We want to use the right gauge because you don't want to waste silver. It's just way too expensive. And I don't see that anybody else is in here just yet, so I'm gonna putz around here and kind of get my workspace set up. Today's techniques, I'm going to be sawing, and I'm going to be filing, a lot of filing to get those edges smooth so they don't hurt anybody's wrist. I'm going to be doing some texturing. I've got to put the ribs in the feathers, and I'm going to do some soldering, and then some antiquing, and then the finish work. Oh, hey, Wendy. Good morning. I'm just getting started. It's just you and I right now. But I was just showing kind of the materials. This is the silver, and this is the way I get my silver. Um, and then I'm going to use, I have some templates, and they're just paper, so that I can have something to saw, some reference when I'm sawing. And so I will use some double-sided tape and stick that down on the silver, so when I saw it, because I can't do that freehand. I'm terrible. Most jewelers will use, unless you're just cutting a little square or something, most jewelers will use a template, but the goal is to get it as close to the edge as possible so you waste as little silver as you possibly have to. But I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm sure others will join. So I'm using some double-sided tape. I use double-sided tape, or I sometimes use rubber cement to cement these down, and I'm out of it right now, so we'll put the double-sided tape. I can't just put regular tape, like around the edges, because, and just tape it down, because then as I'm sawing, I would be, if I just had this down and tape along here, once I saw, then this paper wouldn't have anything holding it down, and it would become very difficult to saw. So you can't do that. You've got to put some sort of adhesive so it sticks from the back. So I'm just getting some double-sided on here. It doesn't have to be fancy or pretty, just enough to do the job. So how are you today, Wendy? And this is probably the hardest part of the entire process, and that is getting the backing off of the, well, doggone it, getting the backing off of the double-sided tape. And by the way, if it looks like I'm sitting really low to my bench, so you can see I'm like just chest height right here, I am. When you saw, you want to get your chair as close to the floor as possible so that you're looking, right directly. I'm going to set my piece on this bench pin and we're going to saw from there, but I'm not having any luck getting this backing off. This is the stuff that I got at the Dollar Tree, so, well, come on. I might have to go and get some of my score tape. That works for me just a little bit better, because this, we could take up the whole. Doing well. Just sat down to die cut for some orders. Oh, wonderful. I'm doing well. Still a little sad about losing our puppy. Well, still a lot sad. It's tough. It's raining out. She hated the rain, and we buried her in the backyard, and I just hate the fact that she's out there getting wet because she hated it. Oh, she hated the rain. But it's the circle of life, and, it's just the way things go. And we knew she was 9 years old, so, and I know big dogs don't live as long. Ah, there we go. Big dogs don't live as long as the smaller dogs, so, we knew her time was coming. It was just so unexpected. That was the hard part, was that, we had no clue it was coming. She went out. She was fine. She got up that morning. She was perfectly fine. Went outside like she does every morning. She would go out before sunlight and just snoop around the property, because we've got a couple of acres, and she'd like to go check things out, chase any birds that might be around, and then she would come back in and have her breakfast, and she went out like normal. And the day before, she had been so playful, and I mean, just nothing that gave us any indication there was a problem. And when she went out that morning, she didn't come back. And my husband finally went looking for her, and she had collapsed in the driveway. So it was just really sudden. And that's the part that was really shocking. Well, and for us, it's really hard because it was so sudden. But for her, I'm so glad that if it was her time, that she lived right up until her last minutes. I mean, she was active and happy, and we think her heart gave out, and she had a massive heart attack, and that's what we're guessing. That's really about the only thing it could be, because she hadn't been sickly. She hadn't had any issues. I've got one more little piece I need to tape down, then we'll get started. Yeah, it's cold and dreary here too. A perfect day to be inside working on this kind of stuff. It sounds like you're doing some die cutting. I've got my optivisors on, so everything is magnified. I have a hard time reading what's in chat because it's so blown up, it's blurry. Okay, one more little piece of tape backing to get off, and then I've touched it so much I've probably taken all the sticky off of it. Okay, there we go. All right, now we're going to put this down. Like I said, we want to use as little silver as we possibly can. So I've got this way over to the edge, all the way up to the top, maybe a little, no, it's not too close. And get this ready to saw. And actually, I'm going to, so this is called a bench pin, this little wooden piece right here. I'm going to push it back just a little bit. It's called a bench pin, and we do lots of stuff on it, but specifically sawing. So there's a little V cut in here, and that's where I'm going to put my metal there, and I'm going to, saw right up till there. But I'll show you, this is the saw blades that we use. I use a 3/0 saw blade, and it's so thin. I mean, it's almost, it's almost as thin as a strand of hair, but that's the saw blade that we're going to use. And so the saw blade is hooked in at this end with a thumb screw, and now I have to put it in down here and tighten it down so that it's in there tight. The thing is, you want it really tight, because if it's loose, it's just going to break if it's, bending. So what I'm going to do, and I don't know if you can see this on camera, but I'm going to put it up next to my bench, and I'm going to put the end of my saw blade kind of in my breastbone, and then I'm going to push. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, I need a pair of pliers. I need some pliers. My saw is so old that the little thumb screws are kind of stripped in there, so I have to tighten it down with the pliers. So again, I put it up next to my breastbone. I push till I push that thumb screw in a bit, and then tighten it down. I'm going to tighten it with pliers so it doesn't pop out. And now my blade is loaded. And I don't know if you can hear that, but you should hear a real high kind of tinging sound. Oh, somebody else joined us. If you don't get that, that sound, then your blade's not in there tight enough and it's going to break. So you want your blade in there pretty tight. And then I'm going to put some lubrication on my blade so that it glides through the metal pretty easy. And I'm looking for my beeswax. There it is. This is my beeswax. Now, the blades, and they're so tiny, the teeth on the blades, you probably can't even see it, even on camera. They're so tiny. And they're on the front. And when you saw the blades are pointing down. So I can run my finger on it this way, and this is how we tell if the blade is loaded right. You run your finger up and you should feel those blades, because when you saw, it only cuts on the downstroke, not on the up, because when you're going up, you're going against just the flat metal. So we put our beeswax on the back of the saw blade where it's smooth, so that we don't clog up those teeth in there. And then I'm just gonna put this on here. Now this is a big piece of metal, so I'm gonna have some fun trying to get this. Hang on. I put this in a ways. I probably need to move it back out. Hey, Becky. I'm just getting started. I glued my pattern down to the silver. This is 22 gauge silver. And I am getting ready to start. And I use double-sided tape. I also will sometimes use rubber cement, but I'm out of it. So we're going to saw, and I think I'm trying to decide which way I want to start. I think I'm going to go this way. Once I get this side done and get it cut off from the rest of this, it'll be easier. But I'm going to saw, and this isn't the most exciting thing, but it's a key skill for any jeweler, bench jeweler, to have. And so I'm going to start this. Remember I said it only cuts on the downstroke. So I'm going to go on the downstroke. There we go. And get it started. Now, if that's too loud, you'll let me know. I can mute. A couple things about sawing. Your posture, you want to sit with your feet flat on the floor, back straight, and, head looking at this, because believe it or not, the posture can change the way your saw blade saws. And when you saw, you want to just go up and down. Let the saw, don't push. If I push forward on it, I'll break the blade. And I may break a blade or two while we're going, because I forget sometimes. but you just want to go up and down. And then when I get to these parts, you'll see, I'll show you when I get here, you move the metal, not the saw. The saw basically stays in the same place the whole time. And you move the metal around, kind of like when you're fussy cutting, you want to move the paper. It's the same idea. And so I'm just going to follow the outline. And believe it or not, it's a lot harder than it looks. I've just been doing this for so long that makes it look a little easy. I promise you that sawing and staying on a line is challenging, especially for new folks. So this will take a minute. This is probably the longest part of the whole thing. And like I said, this piece is not all that complex technically. I've made some pieces that really gave me a run for my money, but now see, I've gotten to a dip, so I'm moving the metal. And then I'm going to move it back. This piece doesn't have a lot of technical skills in it, but the silver, there's so much silver, and silver is so expensive. All right, so here I am at a point. Hey, Big Mama, I'm sawing out this bracelet. When I get to this point, I'm actually, you see how I'm turning? I'm sawing up and down in the same spot so I can get around that corner. I'm just bringing my saw up and down until I turn the metal. And then the same here. I just turn the metal, because if I try to turn my saw blade, it'll snap it in half. And there we go. And like I said, I may very well snap a blade or two. We buy our blades in gross. Well, they come in packs of 12, but I usually buy 12 packs of 12 when I buy them, and they last me for quite a while. But not uncommon to break a saw blade. So here we go. Now, what I'm going to do here, instead of turning this at this little point here, I'm going to go straight up and get this feather separated from the main piece of silver so that I can work with it better, easier. I don't have all that silver sheet hanging off. And I have always found it pretty amazing to see what you can take a piece of wire or just a piece of flat silver and turn it into. It's just amazing for me. And for those of you who just came in, this is my bench block. I'm sitting at Walgreens waiting for, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I've never had one, but I've heard they're miserable. So here's where we are so far. You can see I've cut along that line and I'm up here now. So I'm going to, now I don't have to turn my blade so much because I'm at the top. I can just go in, turn the piece of, well, actually I need to go around that corner a little bit. And I'm going to go around this little dip. And then we're back up again. Now, my saw blade is catching on the silver, and that's why we put the lubricant on. So I'm going to go again on the back of the blade so I don't clog up the teeth in the saw. Put some more lubricant on so that my blade slides through that metal easier. When I took a class early on, I don't know, 10 years or so ago, I took a class on sawing, and I did all right. I really concentrated on following the instructions, but there was one lady in class. The other thing you don't want to do is push the blade forward. You want to barely, on the handle down here, you want to just barely hold it, just enough to push the blade up and down. So you're really supposed to let the blade do the work. If you push forward on the saw, like trying to push it through the metal, again, you will break the blade. And there was a lady in the class, and I mean, every time she turned around, she was breaking a blade, and she got so frustrated. She said, I will never saw again. It was funny. Now, you see, I'm getting right up to the end there, and I need a flat surface to stabilize the silver on. So I have to, again, my bench pin, it's got this V, and sometimes I can feel if I'm sawing when I hit the wood, I can tell I'm not cutting metal. And so I have to reposition and try to keep enough support that I can saw and not run into that wood bench block or bench pin. So again, I'm moving the metal. The saw pretty much has not changed spots, if you notice. It's pretty close to where it was when I started, and I'm just going straight up and down. Light grip on my saw. I'm not holding it real tight. We are almost there. Now I still have to cut out that spine, but that'll be easy. That's just a straight. And I love, this is, no, Sandy, a CNC machine won't work on this. It will, the pieces are too close together. It'll just burn through them. I had actually looked into that. And the other thing is that I love to saw. This is like one of my favorite things to do. And when I make my night lights, all of the patterns in my night lights are hand cut. And that's sort of one of my brand things, is that I don't use automated machinery to cut. I cut everything by hand. And yeah, it takes a little longer, but it's not that bad. I mean, I'm almost done. This whole bracelet will be done today. It doesn't, except maybe the finish. I may have to put it in the tumbler, and I do have to go about 3 o'clock for my radiation treatment. So I'll either finish it tonight or, first thing in the morning. It's got to ship out tomorrow is the due date. So. But yeah, I don't sell in silver. Now, I do make these in copper as well. And I have also, in fact, I found a picture this morning as I was looking for a picture of that thumbnail. I found a picture of this bracelet in copper with some really pretty teal patina, the copper patina color, where I had, added the patina and aged it. And I'm thinking I might make some of those to, one, have at the sale, because the big sale that's coming up, not this coming weekend, but I think the next weekend, the one Liz is doing, I am going to be a selling vendor in that sale. And the first, I have 2 slots, 2 1-hour slots on Saturday. They're not back to back because I need a little time to change my setup. But in the first, how did I learn to do this? A lot of it was from YouTube and self-taught books. And then along the way, I have taken some classes. Like there was a metals class on, sawing and making a bracelet out of, we use brass in that class because it's a real pretty cheap material, but, and then just lots and lots of practice, Wendy. I love Facebook for the amount of knowledge that it provides, especially when you're doing something a little more technical. See how I'm turning this metal now? So I turn the metal all the way around, and now I have to come back towards me. So again, I'm just going to go up and down, not actually cutting the metal at this point until I get it turned around, and then I'll start cutting down the other way. Facebook is, there are some wonderful Facebook groups, and if I'm ever stuck on something and not sure how to do something or need ideas on, materials, or I just have an idea and can't figure out how to execute it, I can go onto any number of Facebook groups and type it in, and I'll get, within minutes, but definitely within a couple of hours, I'll get so many ideas. And so I participate in a lot of Facebook groups for that reason. All right. And there's our feather. And that's going to bend around and become a cuff eventually. Now, this may or may not come off with the double-sided tape. If it doesn't, I just put it under the torch and let the torch burn off the paper. This looks like it's coming off. There we go. So now I'm going to have to file that all down, and make it wearable because it's pretty rough and that right now. But before I do that, I'm going to cut out the spine of the feather. And I have another template for that. Now this is scrap silver. I can make something out of, this bit in here. I also make a ring. I call it my Mosaic Ring because I make it out of scraps of silver. So I'll cut off like that little finger sticking out, one here. I'll cut off little bits and pieces, and then I solder them down to the top of a ring. And so the ring has all sorts of little bits and pieces on it. So I can use some of that. And what I can't actually use, I will put it in my scrap bucket, and I'll melt it down to make silver balls or other shapes. Sometimes I'll make a pendant where I've just melted silver and let it melt into, whatever shape it naturally goes into, and, use that for a pendant. Those are really popular because they're so organic. So that silver none of it will go to waste. I have a whole container full of scrap silver. That's probably worth, in weight, probably worth close to $1,000 just because of how expensive silver has become. But, I just keep it for when I need the odd bits and pieces. All right. So here's the spine, and we'll tape that down. Again, getting as close to the edges as possible so we don't waste any silver. I got all the way through that feather without breaking a blade. That's pretty good, y'all. Yeah, this is cool, isn't it? Wait till you see. Yeah, it does take patience, Big Mama. But like I said, piercing is one of the things that I absolutely love to do. And on my night lights, which I will have for sale, in Liz's big sale, on my night lights, it's a lot of piercing, and I find it very zen, just to saw. Usually I'll have music on, but because I'm live, I didn't put any music on. But yeah, usually I blast some old 70s, good old rock and roll, and just sit down and I can saw for hours. Now I got off a little. I sort of tilted my saw that way, so I'm going to back it up and just straighten out. And then if I get any irregular spots, like a little lump where I sawed off track and then brought it back on track, and I get a little, mound like that, I can file that off pretty easy. It's easier to stay on track because it's less filing, but unless I just cut right through it and cut the thing in half, and even that I could fix. I can solder it back together. There really isn't a lot that you can't fix. It's a long piece, and you're going to see when we get to the end, it comes to a point, and so it gets really challenging to still keep. I'm a hillbilly, so I get it. You're playing with the saw in the band. Are these nickel silver? Oh no, this is all sterling, Becky. That's all I work with is sterling and copper. I played with copper for a long time because sterling is so much more expensive, and I didn't want to jump into sterling until I felt like I wasn't going to, totally ruin a bunch of pieces. So I worked for a couple of years in copper before I finally ventured into the sterling silver. And I haven't had to buy, so I haven't been making as much as I used to, and I need to get a lot more made. And start, believe it or not, getting ready for the holidays, because it's almost May, and that's when I start building my inventory for the fall shows and then the holiday season. And then I have that store over in Durham, North Carolina that sells my work, and she's starting to get a little bit low on inventory. And so I need to get some things made and sent over to her. Oh, while I'm working on this, I wanted to show you. Let me get this sawed out first. I have a, what other designs do you make in the bracelets? Oh, all kinds of stuff. In fact, well, here's one that I made on camera recently. Oh no, I guess we did this part of it and soldered it all together, and I still haven't antiqued it, but this is what it looks like when it's aged. So these are copper bracelets. And then I have a brand new design that I want to show you guys what I came up with, and I plan to make lots of them. I just haven't gotten started yet. I've had a lot going on in my life between the cancer stuff and then the dog dying, and I just haven't made it down to my studio to do some serious metal work, and I plan to do that very, very soon, if not this week. Because I need to get some stuff made. But I make everything. I make bracelets, I make earrings, necklaces, rings. I make a lot of rings. And I do some home decor items. I do night lights, I make clocks, and I make little copper bowls, I make keychains, I make magnets, I make all sorts of things. I'm going to make, for Maggie's grave, I'm going to make a headstone out of copper for her. And I think what I'm going to do is take some square pieces and put some resist on them, one for each letter of her name, and then I'm going to etch them. And so the metal, when I put it in the etching solution, will eat away around the letters, because there'll be a resist over the letters that will resist the etching process. And so when it's done, the letters on each square will stand up from the copper, and then I can antique it. I can solder them together. I haven't quite figured out how. I think what I'm going to do is take an arc of wire and then solder her name. And I may need to do two to make it stable, make kind of a frame, and then solder her letters of her name. And then I don't know what else I'll put on it, but then put a stake so we can put it in the ground. So I think I'd like to make her a memorial. All right, there we go. We're done with the saw. Now, when we're done with the saw, I want to release the tension and let that blade out of there, because there's a lot of tension on it, and it can break while it's just sitting around waiting. So another little piece of scrap that I can do something with. So this is where I learned not to throw away my scraps. And we are done sawing the pieces out. Now, let me show you, and I'm going to have to raise my chair because I don't know, some of you weren't here, but yeah, it really will be sweet. It'll be something that I made. I told you guys at the beginning, when I'm sawing, I want to sit as close to the floor as possible. Well, when I'm working, that's really awkward. So let me raise my chair back up. There we go. And now I'm ready to start filing. So even though I sawed a pretty smooth line, this is really rough right now. Oh, before I do that, this isn't riveted together yet. Here's my idea for a new cuff bracelet. And basically it's two parts. It's a really, really, really thin piece of copper with a piece of fabric. And I used some of that upholstery fabric that I had. I put it down there and then I folded I put some glue behind it just to make sure it sticks. And then I folded over the edges of the copper because that's a really thin piece of copper. And by itself, this is not, actually, it's pretty. With that material, it's actually not bad. But I still think it's too thin. And so I cut a piece of heavier gauge metal, and then this fits over the top, just like that other one I made, and then it will get riveted at these four corners. But the challenge I have, and I haven't finished it yet, is that I want to antique it, but I have the fabric in there. So the back piece is fine. I can put it down in the antiquing solution, and that piece is fine. This piece, I'm going to have to use a paintbrush and just sort of paint it on and hope I don't damage the fabric. I think I can do it, but or I'll leave this part bright and then just antique the back piece. That's the other option. So this is kind of my prototype. What do you guys think? I think it's too wide this way. I want to make it a little bit narrower, or maybe some of both, because some people like the really wide cuffs. But what do you guys think of that? And then I've got all sorts of different fabric. I could use any fabric in there. So that's my newest idea. And I need to make up a whole bunch of those. You like it? Good. All right, so now I'm going to file, and I've talked about files before. I have a half round file. Okay, so it curves this way, and then it's flat on the back. And then I have just a flat file. And I use both, and I actually am going to have to use some of my little files to get in the little places. These are needle files. I've got a lot of extra dust in there. These are needle files, and they have little, I have one that's my favorite, this one. This is called a barrette file. It's got a flat side here, and then these back two sort of taper up. I don't know if you can see that, but they're flat. They don't have teeth on them, so you can get into little tiny places like this and file without damaging the other side. So we'll be using that too. But I'm going to start with the half round, and I'm going to take my vein that I did. You could antique it before. Yeah, I could, Becky. My fear with that, and I'll just have to play with a bunch of things. My fear with that is that I would mark it up, because when I bend over, I have to like hammer and use pliers when I bend the metal over. So I don't know if it would mark it up, but I certainly can try that. That was another thought. So I'm just going to, remember when we file, just like with sawing, it only cuts in one direction. With filing, it only files in one direction, and that's going away from me. So this one's going to take a little while because it's so little. And I think I have another round file that's got a grittier tooth to it. So the bench block, you'll notice it has like some little V's cut in it, and most very experienced jewelers will have all sorts of things cut into their bench pin because it helps stabilize depending on the size of the piece. And every time they get a project that they need to, stabilize, if it's different and they don't have a slot cut out, then they'll just cut a new slot. And I'd like to turn it this way and saw, but I don't have one here. So let's do that real quick. Can I take it before? Yeah. I was thinking I could make earrings too. Little rectangle earrings that match, that had the so I'm just going to cut a notch. So that I can work from this side. Get it all the way through the bottom there. Still haven't, this is a good blade, I still haven't broken it. Come on. I'm surprised. Okay, come on out of there. There it is. All right. So now I can put my bench pin closer to me. This is a good angle for me to work at. And, that's the whole point with these bench pins, because they're really cheap. You can, if you get too many nicks in it, you can replace them very easily. Although a well-used bench pin is very coveted. You'll see all the little marks in there where I hit it with the saw, and mine doesn't look, and I've been using this bench pin for about 10 years, but it certainly doesn't look as well worn as some of the others that I've seen. So what's everybody else up to today? What are you working on, Becky? Anything? Oh, and Becky, how's your sister doing? Haven't heard about that situation lately. Now, and I'm getting this sort of bent up a little bit. That's fine. I can hammer it back in place. I'm not worried about that. As long as I don't break it. So when the curve goes this way, we use a curved file. When I file the other side that goes over, I'll use the flat file. My sister's good. Working on invoices. Oh, isn't that fun? I think you've got one of those for me. And you guys, I know I say this all the time and I sound like a broken record, but I really appreciate your support. Not just purchasing at my sales. I really do appreciate that, but just your kind words and like coming out to watch this video, and just the general support. I really appreciate it. Hey, if one of you wouldn't mind, I should have done this before I went live. Aw, thank you, Wendy. Would one of you post the link to this in the Dream It, Imagine It, Create It group? Just in case anybody, because I know there were some other people that wanted to watch and they may not have gotten my notification. Now, the other thing I can do, and as I get down to the end of this, I probably will, is I can put a little sanding disc on my flex shaft and I can sand this. So when I get down to the very end of it, I'll do that. Okay, so now this is the curving the other way, so I'm going to use the flat file. And again, those are more finishing files. They're real light sanding, and I need a little bit heavier. So I've got they come in numbers. A number 4 is rougher than a number 2, and those finishing files are number 2s, and this is a 4. So it's going to be a little more aggressive with the filing. And you see me running my finger over it. I'm feeling for any, waviness in the copper. Now on this piece, I'm not as concerned about getting it perfect because one, it's a spine on a feather, and those are not, things of nature, not perfect. 2, it's going to be soldered down to the bracelet, so it's not, you're not really going to feel it. And after I put it in the tumbler, it'll round off, it'll smooth out a lot of that in the tumbler. So I'm not as concerned about getting this absolutely perfect. In fact, I think that's about, I'm not going to go down on this really tiny part here because I'll just mangle it. So I kind of give it an eyeball, and it looks pretty good. Feel the edges, make sure. A little bit in here. And then we'll start on the big piece. All right, so that's the spine. Now, what I do on this is the flat file is always going to be used on a curve that's going this way, up and over, like over a hill. Anything that goes down and dips like a valley is going to get the half round file. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through and file all the big spots that I can with the big file, because it certainly goes a lot faster. And then I'll switch to, so this has got a little dip here, so I'm using the half round. Certainly the big files file a lot quicker, so as much as I can do with that, I will, and then switch to the little needle files to get into all the little shapes. Oh, thank you. And again, I'm using my number 4 files just because I want to get a really good, and this is where this one I will make really smooth. I don't want to feel any, when I run my finger over it, it should be very, very smooth, because that's going to be worn by somebody, and you don't want them feeling a bunch of hills and valleys in the side. So if you ever buy handmade silver or copper, any handmade jewelry, run your finger along the edges. You can tell how much time they took by how smooth that metal is, because it does take a bit of time, and some people don't, and it's okay. Everybody has a different aesthetic. Some think it looks more organic and natural not being filed. Personally, I think it just makes it more finished and polished looking. Bye, Sandy. All right. Now I've got a point here, and that's a real sharp point, and you don't want that poking anybody. So what I'm going to do there is round off that little point. I'm going to take it flat first. I'll tell you another thing, and Becky, you may know this from your dabbling in metals. When I'm filing up in the air like this, it's not doing a really good job. I need to brace it on something. That's when I'm getting the most out of my file. I will pick it up in the air sometimes because, I don't know, it just seems more convenient at the time, but it's not doing the job like it is when you've got it braced on your bench pin. Now I'm going to come back at that with the needle files when I get those out, but we've taken off much of that really sharp point. So now I'm just going to continue going around. So you guys, I am 3 treatments into radiation. It'll be 4 after today. And so 3 treatments done and 17 to go. By the end of this week, I will almost be halfway. Time just goes by so fast. So when I get this all done, I'm going to take one of my little sanding wheels, because the top of the metal has like some scratches and little marks in it, and I want to get those out, certainly. The other thing I will do is put a little beveled edge. So right now it's like 90 degrees. So this side is coming straight up. The other side is coming straight across, and so there are sharp edges right at the edges, and I will take my file and just bevel those edges a little bit. And that's another thing that a lot of people don't do. And I was taught, one of my teachers, she said, that is what will differentiate your work from others. She said, because a lot of people don't take the time to do that. And people may not notice it when they're trying on your jewelry. They may not say, oh, this edge is beveled, this one's not, but they'll feel the difference when they put on your jewelry. It won't feel rough on their skin. So I try to do all those little. Wow, what, Wendy? I'll turn it this way. You know, and it's these kinds of things that I'm doing now that I think, you know, when people look at handmade and they think, man, it's expensive, they don't realize all the, you know, the work that has to go into it. Because this is not machine made, you know, we can't just put it in a machine and have it come out all nice and pretty. That feels really good. Oh, yeah, I will be after the end of this week. Now we start on the other side. And so you notice I just keep going back and forth with my files. As my husband used to say all the time before I got into tools, it helps having the right tool for the job at hand. And that is so true. I've become a tool junkie. I have got more pliers and more hammers, and they all do something a little bit different. Now I'm going to leave all of this for the little files because it's just too much. I feel awesome. Now they tell me that I may get to the point where I feel like I have a sunburn where they're treating it. That has not happened yet. I also understand that after the first week, and then maybe for a week or 2 after treatments, I may get tired, like feel like I need to have a nap in the middle of the day. And I actually felt that after the first treatment, and I don't know, I don't sleep very well. As I get older, my sleeping is worse and worse. So I don't know if it's just because I hadn't been sleeping or what, but I was so tired. And so apparently that's gonna, or can be. I think most people have the tiredness. I don't know about the sunburn thing, but I have a steroid cream and an over-the-counter cream to use to help with that. But unlike chemo, that really goes into your whole body, radiation is so targeted that you don't get sick. You don't get the nauseous, and you're not going to lose hair because they're not targeting your head. Only the area where the radiation beam is going is going to be affected. So I'm going to switch over. This is a big, I showed you that little barrette file. This is a big one. It's smooth on the back and it's got tapered ends so I can get this little point into little areas, and then it's a file on this. And I want to get down into this little area a bit. Actually, where was I? Yeah, it's this one. Maybe it was even down in here. Again, I want to use the big files as long as I can because they're faster. And again, this is a number 2, so it's more of a finishing file, and it doesn't take off a lot of material. Sometimes I get impatient because it's not taking off enough, and so I'll switch to the rougher file at this point. I don't have a barrette file in the rough ones, so yeah, me too. I really am feeling good. I had to go and buy, I need to have, I can't, well, a couple things. I can't wear underwire bras because that will irritate. Well, even after the surgery I couldn't, but they had put me in a kind of like a sports bra thing, but it was just temporary, and it was velcroed together at the front, and the velcro sort of wore out. And so I had to go out and buy bras, and they said sports bras are the best. They give you good support, and there's, well, you can get them with underwire, but don't get the underwire, and they said it gives good compression, better than a regular bra, so that as you're trying to get the swelling to go down and stuff, that compression will help with that. So I ordered 3 of them the other day, and amazingly enough, I got some that fit, just getting them online. And man, I don't know if I'll ever go back to a regular bra now. These things are so dang comfortable. Okay, I'm just doing a last little finger check to make sure I don't have any spots that need to be smoothed out with the big files. And then when we file over, see, this is curved this way, so you file that same way. You kind of take your file over so you don't put a flat spot. That feels good. Good. All right. That's all the big file stuff, so we'll set those aside. And we'll go to our little files. And for this, I'm going to use my barrette. I'm going to use a half round file. So this one is same as on the big one. It's round. It's actually half round on both sides, not just one side. And then I'm going to use a round, all the way round file. So I'm going to use the round file first, and I'm going to go into all of these little spots where I had the turn, you know, where the feathers come together, and I'm just gonna go through and make sure those are all smooth in there. And I can't really get my finger in there to feel it, so you know, I basically just have to look and make sure that it looks good. But all I'm doing is filing that little round piece, and then I'll go in with a barrette or a half round and get the rest of it. Now I have to be careful when I do this, because sometimes I've caused it to get misshapen using these round. You don't want to go overboard with them because they can change the shape. Some of the pieces are just really hard to get into. And then once we get this all done and we clean up the top of it, then we'll be ready to put the marks in for the feathers. And that we do with the hammer, adding the texture. Oh, it looks like it's down to just you and me, Wendy. This one's not as exciting to watch because I do a lot of, you know, I did a lot of filing and sawing and like I said, it's not hard work. It's not technically hard work. It's lots of it. For some people it can be tedious, but I enjoy it. Especially when it's all done and I can look at the finished piece. Alright, I think we've got all of those. I'm going to take the barrette file and just go over any of the things that are curving up that I couldn't get the big file into. And again, I can't really get down in there to feel it, so I just sort of have to look. Now this is a real fine barrette file. I do have another one in here that's a little rougher. Let's see if I can find that. It's always fun trying to find files in this little file box. Okay, where did it go? Where did it go? That one. There's a smaller round file. So I'm having a hard time finding that other little barrette file in here. I put a piece of tape around the bottom of my favorite barrette file, and I probably should do that on the rougher one because that's my favorite shape of file to use. And I'm just not seeing it in here. There it is. There it is. Oh yeah, much better. So yeah, I have to do this one more by sight. And I use the optivisors to magnify it so I can really see. And we just want to smooth out those sides up to the point where we had used the big file so that it's smooth all the way around. I see a couple people have joined. Welcome. Feel free to say hello. cut out, for those who just joined, I used my saw and cut out the bracelet and the spine. Now I'm going through and smoothing everything out around the edges. And for those who just joined, this is the bracelet, what it looks like cut out. It's flat. I don't have any texture on it yet. I'm just going around the edges and smoothing it out. And then this little piece here will get soldered on as the spine. So I found this smaller round file. So I'm using different files. I have some full-size files I used on the bigger areas because they do a better job, or they're faster at taking off material and smoothing things out. And these little files, the little needle files, I need to get into the small areas. So we want to make this as smooth as possible for the customer. I see we've got some more folks in here, but nobody's speaking up. You're welcome to say hello, and if you have any questions about what I'm doing, you know, please speak up and ask. I'm happy to. That's why I do these. I know people are interested in how this kind of stuff is done, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So anywhere I see a little burr, and then from filing, if I feel along the edge, I can feel a little burr there. We'll take care of that in the next step and smooth that all out. All right. So I use different shape files for those of you who are new in here. I use different shaped files to do different things. You know, work in different areas. These big ones and small ones, and then ones that are shaped differently. This one I'm using now is a half round, so it's actually on both sides. This one's a little smaller on the round. This one's got a bigger curve on the round, so depending on how deep and pronounced the area is, I'll use one or the other. It's very interesting to see how something is creating. Yeah, it really is, isn't it? I think it really helps people have an appreciation for handmade things when, you know, it's the same thing in our paper crafting. You know, yeah, it's just paper, but when you look at all the things we do to the paper to make it look pretty and behave the way we want it to, it's all the same stuff. And I think watching a creation video is very beneficial for most people. All right, I think that might be it. I'm just looking to see if I have any areas that look like they need some more finish work on them. And then again, I'm running my finger over it because if it's smooth, then I know that it's ready. If I feel rough or any hills and valleys in there that aren't supposed to be there, then I know that I need to do a little more work. And I can also do more filing right before finishing work. If I go through all the, all of this, and I solder and I, put it in the tumbler, and then I still feel something that needs a little help, then I certainly can, do some more finish work on it and do some more filing. That's what I want. All right, that looks pretty darn good. We're making some good progress here. All right, now I want to go back to this just for a little bit with my needle nose, my little files. And just make sure that my big files were bending this piece because they were so big, and this piece is so delicate. So I think with the needle nose pliers, we're getting some better filing. And it's not going to be as smooth for a couple of reasons. One, it's real delicate, and two, like I said, it's the, this is the spine of the feather, and it's not supposed to be perfect. This won't be going on and off somebody's wrist. This is part of the piece. And what you'll see when we go to solder it is that there's so much metal. I actually have to use 2 torches. I have to bring flame in from 2 different sides to get it hot enough for the solder to melt. All right, there's that. Now I'm going to take my flex shaft and take out this bit that's in there, and we're going to use that one. It's empty. Okay, where are they? There they are. These are my bristle wheels, and they're different grits. You see, white is actually brown is the roughest, and then white, yellow, red, blue, and green. So I can get it really fine. But for right now, I'm going to use a yellow, which is not the roughest, it's next. And I'm going to go across the top of my piece. And this is going to take out any light scratches. Now, the funny thing is that while it takes out scratches, it also puts in scratches. So that's why you use the next grit down. The other thing it's doing is it's taking off. Ooh, those are some pretty tough burrs, and they're not coming off real good. So let's do something a little different. Let's put a sanding disc. So I have this little sanding disc, and before I use the yellow, I'm just going to go along the way, because right along the edges I have a little lip or a little burr where I was filing, and I want to make sure, I want to make sure that's all gone, and it is. This little piece is hard to So this is a little bit, the sandpaper is coarser than those bristle discs, so it's taking off the burr, but it's also, you know, leaving some sanding marks in there. So we'll do this first. And that's how, if you ever see jewelry that has a true mirror finish on it, that's how they get that, is one, they sand it from a coarse sanding all the way down to the sandpaper that's so fine you can't feel any grit on it. And then they use polishes on it, again starting with a heavier grit and then, you know, working down to something really fine, and that puts a real mirror finish on it. But the problem with mirror finish is that the minute you touch it, you leave a fingerprint on it. And so I really don't tend to put mirror, I mean, it'll be shiny, but not mirror finish where, you know, it's like a mirror. I don't take it to that level because it will never stay that way. So, all right. So I either put a satin finish. Ooh, I see something I didn't do on this. Let's go back and get it. I either put a satin finish on it or a shine, but not, like I said, not a mirror shine. You see those marks? Can you see that in there? The swirl marks? That's from the sandpaper, and obviously we don't, you know, we don't want those in there, so that's where the next step will take those out. And the one thing I forgot to do, that I'm going to do as soon as I get this done, I forgot to round off all those real spiky. So we're doing two things here. We're taking off the burr. Get off here. We're taking off the burr and we're pulling any, you know, minor scratches. If we had big scratches in the metal, that would be a different story. But these are just minor, you know, tool marks and little minor scratches. So we're taking those out. Okay. Now, before I go on to the next step, now the other thing is, can y'all see all this little, bring it down really close, can you see all that little silver dust? Like, I keep that. I don't throw that away. And I put that into my silver scrap bin because if I ever send it in to recycle my scrap, over time that dust builds up, and that is sterling silver. So you can recycle that and get some money back out of it. Okay, so here's a, oh, actually, what I want is my barrette file. Okay, let's go in and take care of these corners, these sharp points. Sometimes I'll even go in with a pair of snips and just snip it off to be kind of a little bit of flat at the very top, but today we'll just use this. Because you don't want that to poke somebody and injure them. Okay, that one's pretty good. And these are sharp. They're definitely spiky bits. And again, I'm using the barrette file because it's smooth on the back, and if I happen to rub up against the piece on the other side, it's not going to put file marks in it. It's not going to damage it. Where if I use just a flat file, that has teeth on both sides of the file, and so I would damage it. Okay. But yeah, I'm definitely going to make some of these in copper. I mean, like I'll sit down and cut out 4 or 5 of them all at once, and then I'll work on them like an assembly line. You know, I'll cut them out, then I'll do all the filing, and then I'll do, you know, all the wheel and sanding disc and kind of do each step at a time. This one's really pointy. I suppose I could modify my template and make these a little more rounded, but it's all just part of the process. You can recycle that silver dust? Yeah, absolutely. Because they just put it all into a, you know, like a little refinery, and they melt it all down, and it's silver. So yeah, I don't go overboard in saving my silver dust, but if I have, you know, like some like this, I have a good bit there, and it would be worth putting that in my little bin. If I've just got a few, if I've done just a little tiny bit of filing and I've got just a little bit, it takes longer for me to try to pick it all up than any money I would get out of it, so I don't mess with it. But all right, couple more, and I'll go back to smoothing this out. Okay, you see how I bent that? Because that's just a little tip, and like I said, there are no fatal, well, there are some, but not many fatal mistakes. I'm just going to put that on my bench block and use my rawhide hammer so I don't put marks in the metal, and hammer that flat again. Problem fixed. This one is really, really sharp as well. This one's giving me a little devil of a time here. We're back up to 5 people. If you're in here, stop and say hello. If you have any questions, let me know. We're just finishing up with the filing, and then once I'm done with that, I'll start putting the texture in the feather for the little ribs of the feather. I think this is the one I did. All right. Now those will also soften up when it goes in the tumbler. those will round out a little bit more. And then I can always, if at the very end I feel like they're still too pointy, I can always file down some more. All right. Now, we were sanding, and I finished with the sandpaper on both pieces. So now I'm going to go back to my yellow bristle wheel, and that'll take down the marks from the sandpaper, but it'll leave its own marks, and then we'll do the next grit down, and we'll do a couple of grits on this. Okay. I don't know why, but no one ever told me this specifically, but I always go in circular motions when I'm doing my sanding. So there you can see there's still some marks in it, but not the same as what the sandpaper had. That was the sandpaper. They were much bigger. So we've reduced the size of the marks in the middle. Yellow is a color wheel that I will use if, well, white more than yellow, but yellow too sometimes. If I want to get a satin finish in something, I will, I mean, you can see how satiny that looks. And sometimes that's as much of a finish, depends on the piece. And as long as I keep it going kind of in the same direction, it'll put the same patterning in the piece. And so sometimes this is all you want. A lot of parallels between this and working with our paper stuff. Oh, hey, Ray. And Shauna, hi. I'm working on this bracelet. I sawed it out. I filed it to get rid of all the rough edges. Now I'm doing I use sanding paper. Now I'm using my bristle wheels to clean up the top and inside surface of the bracelet. I'm going to do a couple more grits of the wheel. All right. So this is, for those of you who just came in, this is my bracelet piece. It looks like a feather. We don't have any of the ribbing in it yet. And then this is going to be the spine. And it needs to be shaped a little more, but that's that. Oh, and I want to show you ladies who just came in. This is my newest idea for a cuff. Taking some of the upholstery fabric, or really any fabric, and encasing it in copper, and they're actually two different pieces, and then that fits over the stronger cuff, and that will get riveted together. I haven't done that yet, but that's my latest idea, and I plan to do kind of a mass make of those. All right, so there was that one. White is the next one, and then red. And red is usually as far as I go. I don't do the blue and green. I just don't see a need to take it quite that far. All right. So this is taking down, like that. This is taking down some of the marks from the yellow wheel, smoothing that out a bit. And I don't know if you can see the difference, but it is getting smoother. And then when I put it in the tumbler, that will also make it very smooth. So like I said at the beginning of this, none of these techniques are super technical or complicated. They're time consuming, and that's part of what drives up the cost of this piece, but more than that, it's the amount of silver in it. It's a pretty big piece of silver. This is, right now anyways, the most expensive piece in my Etsy store. It's $120. And I did get an order for one. I've sold, like maybe 2 or 3 through my Etsy store. I sell more of these in person at like shows when people can talk to me and talk about the process and what it takes to make it, and they realize there's a lot to it. And I think when people are going to spend a lot of money like that, they like to meet the artist and talk to them and hear about how they do stuff. And that one's brown. Oh, my red ones are getting pretty worn down. I'd have to get some new red bristles. Now this is where it's going to start getting much more polished looking. But I can see right now I'm going to have to put and I don't think I have any large red. I've got these. So yeah, I've got all the different colors of bristles in there, but this is my last red. So I'm going to find something to open this with. Nope, not that. A Phillips screwdriver won't work. Sometimes I just use my thumbnail if I can get it started. Well, pooh. Finding anything to open that. There's a screw at the top of this. Oh, there's a red one. I didn't put it back. I've got a red one with a little more bristle on it. And I keep those ones with the little tiny spots because sometimes I need to get into a real tiny space, and those little ones are good for that. So let's go back now that I've got this bigger one. So Ray and Shauna, what are you guys up to today? Shauna, I know you're working on invoicing. Wendy's doing invoicing too. The other thing we'll do is antique this so that the veins in the feather stick out, or they really are pronounced. And then it's kind of dark around the edges of where the spine is going to be. Oh, there's that one. I probably don't need to do both sides of that because one side is going to go down, but easier just to do them both. Okay, you guys, and I think you can see. Let me get this down here a little ways and I'll show you how much difference. Can you see the difference in how shiny that's looking versus how dull and coarse? You can see the line there where I stopped. I don't know if you can see with the light. I'm trying to. So anyway, it's lightening up, and then when we put it in the tumbler, it will get even shinier. So the tumbler has water, a little bit of Dawn dishwashing soap, and stainless steel shot. And it's got different shapes. Some are like a little ball bearing, some have little points on the end, some are, like just little rods. And the reason that you use the different shapes is because it'll get into all the nooks and crannies. And that stainless steel shot, just kind of pounding against the silver, will shine it up. I might do the blue one on this, just to make it a little bit shinier. And if you get to this point and you're working and you see a scratch that didn't come out, you go all the way back to the beginning and start with the sandpaper and then the yellow and then the white and then the red. You have to go through all the steps because the red at this point, if it didn't come out with the other two, it's not going to come out with this one. So you've got to go back and rework it. So that's why you want to really make sure at each stage you're getting everything. Oh no, Wendy's not working on invoicing. I misspoke. That was Becky. Wendy's doing die cuts. I'm not sure Becky's here right now, but she was working on invoicing. Okay, I want this to be just a little bit smoother, so I am going to use the blue. I'm not going to use it on the spine of the feather, but I'm going to do it on the body of the feather. Oh, you are there. And so the next thing, once I finish this on both sides, I'm going to draw a line down the middle just so I know kind of where the spine is going to go. And then I'm going to put the marks in it for the feather, and I'll do that with a hammer. which is another reason this doesn't have to be super, super shiny, because we are going to go back through and texture it. All right. And I don't need that bench block anymore. So what I'm going to do, we'll pull out this, and let's see if I have a Sharpie here. Okay, I'm going to lay this spine down kind of where it's going to go. It's going to go right about there. So what I want to do is just put a mark where the spine is, because, and I'll know it's a little bit farther over. What I want to do is put some feather marks, you know, the lines going through, but I have to do them up to a certain point this way and then the other way, so they make kind of like a V. So let's get this out. Let me get my hammer. Hang on one sec. Where did my hammer go? Did you guys see it? There it is. So, like I said, that, you know, you have the right tool for the right job. And this is, I don't know what type of hammer. I know there's a name for it and I don't remember. But it's got two edges. This one's real chiseled. This one, not as much. It's a little wider. So I'm going to use the little edge. And I've got a steel bench block, and you always want to hammer onto steel because it resists the metal and it allows the hammer to make the marks. Now before I start, and I'm standing up to do this hammering because, I'm going to bring you down in here a little bit more. Before I start doing the hammering, I need to take a quick potty break. I will be right back. Take 5 minutes, grab a drink, run to the restroom, and I will be right back. All right, I'm back. Alrighty, so get the little side, and I'm just going to go, you know, and make these kind of in a V, or not a V shape, but at an angle going all the way up. And if I go a little over that line, that's okay, because we're going to have the spine there. So can you see the marks that are starting to... Sorry for the loud noise. I hope that's not too loud for you guys. And I hope that you can see the hammer marks that are, you know, once we get this thing aged and the patina on it, those will really stand out. The other thing is that when you hammer, you're actually displacing the metal. It's moving, you know, because you're putting a divot in the metal and the metal has to move. And so if you look, I don't know if you can, do you see how crooked that is? That's from the metal being displaced. We can hammer that flat again, but hopefully you can see that. That's one side. And now we need to do... try to get it at roughly the same angle. This is another one of my favorite things to do, and that's to put texture into metal. I just think it's so cool. Believe it or not, this bracelet is over half done. And when you're hammering like this, the goal is not to hit the stainless steel bench block, just to hit the metal, because you can damage your hammers. All right, there it is with the pattern in it. Now, to flatten that out again, I'm going to take my rawhide mallet, and I need to have it flat because the next step is soldering, and I need to have that that rib to lay down really flat on the... Yep, that looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Now, my soldering station is over on the other table, and I was going to try to move the camera, but I think I'll just move the soldering pan over here, because I can solder here as well. That way I don't have to move the camera. So hang tight just a minute, and I'm going to go and get... I've got to move my torch over and the little bowl, and then what we're going to do is solder... I want that to come out just a little bit more. We're going to solder this spine onto the flower, and then we'll shape it and put some antiquing on it and a final polish, and it will be done. get that real flat. So, hang tight. I'll be right back. So I've got, I don't know if you guys remember from other videos, I've got this torch, which is basically, it's MAP gas, but it's like a plumber's torch. But then I've got this hose and nozzle on it that I use to actually do the soldering. Oops. Let me set this down, and then I got to get my other torch. Okay. All my soldering materials, and this little torch is just a little butane torch, but I will very likely need it for the extra heat to get that solder to work. I need a pair of pliers. All right. One more thing. All right, here we go. So, in order to solder, oops, move that out of the way. And I can move. Bear with me here while I get you situated on my there we go. And it's, there it is. That's, there we go. Hey, Marcy. I'm just getting to the fun part. I'm going to solder. So I'm making this bracelet. Here it is so far. You can see maybe that I've stamped all the feather texture in. I sawed it out. That was the first thing I did. And then I have this little spine that needs to go on the bracelet. And I'm going to do what's called sweat soldering. Anybody know what sweat soldering is? Have you done sweat soldering, Becky? So what I'm going to do is take my flux and this is the stuff that makes the solder flow. And a lot of you, if you're new to my channel and watching me do this, you may not know, but when I say solder, I'm not talking about the soldering irons that you use for like household electrical wires and things like that. That doesn't get nearly hot enough for the silver solder that we use. So I have to use a torch to get, oh, have you? Yeah, I didn't like it at first because I couldn't get the hang of it, but I've been doing it a while now and I actually like it. So sweat soldering is where on the back of the piece I'm going to melt some solder and then I'm going to flip it over and put it on top of the piece that I want to solder it to and reheat it, and then hopefully that solder will flow. The other option I have is to put the spine down and then just put little pieces of solder all along where it meets the base. That, with this particular piece, I have found does not work well because, again, the heat we just don't get enough heat. So this is my solder, and I'm just going to cut. Actually, I can't see those really well on there. I'll cut them down here on the table where I can see them. So I'm just going to cut, and solder is basically silver wire with, and I'm not sure, I don't know, Becky, if you know, there's something in it to make it, adhere. Oh, I didn't get my tweezers. Let's see, do I have some here? No. No, I gotta go get some tweezers for my solder. I think these might be too big. Let's see. And when you solder, it's not like when you do silver solder. How do I explain this? If you have two pieces of something, like these two pieces here, and you solder it together with the other type of solder, you're basically just connecting top to bottom. And it can break fairly easy because you've got a weak spot where they're joined. When you do silver soldering, it actually scrambles the molecules of both pieces, and then the solder actually fuses those two pieces together to where they become one. So it's not just hooking the top to the bottom. It's making them truly one piece. And that's why a lot of times a solder joint can be stronger than the rest of a piece because you've actually fused those two pieces together and you now have two pieces. So the chemistry is a little bit different with this type of soldering. And as you can see, or maybe not see, I don't know if you're close enough, let me just bring you down here. I'm trying to play with the camera so I can get you to where you can see it. There you go. So I'm just placing these little pieces of solder over the top of the flux. And this might be a lot. I probably could space them a little farther apart, but because I know that this piece has a hard time, every time I've ever done it, I have a hard time getting enough heat to make the solder flow. The second time, it'll flow just fine on this one piece, but getting it to flow for the, joining the two pieces, I know that I have a hard time with that. So, whoops, come on. So I'm just going to go down the spine here. And solder always follows the heat. So if you are heating something and you want the solder to flow from the inside out, you want your heat source to basically be on the outside, because when that solder melts, it's going to, disperse to the outside. And sometimes I have a problem with that when I am joining like a ring together. I don't heat it evenly enough. I don't have the heat evenly dispersed, and the solder will flow to one side versus the other. Whoops, I'm losing some of my solder here. Now, when this happens, that flux has dried, and the liquid will help keep that solder on. So I'm going to get I have some liquid flux that's in a spray bottle, and I'll just put a little bit of that on to wet it, and that will help keep my solder on the piece. So again, kind of some tedious work. If you're not a real patient person, then metalsmithing is probably not for you. And you know what? I shouldn't say that, because I really am not a patient person in most things. But I find this so relaxing. Working with the metal, and so rewarding in seeing what I get at the end. All right, there it is. Now we're going to take our torch, fire it up. And my gas turned off. It's loud. All right, and now I have my soldering pick so I can help move the solder around as it melts. I'm just going to start melting or warming up the piece, warming up the metal, because it's the base metal, the temperature of the base metal is what's going to make that solder flow and turn liquid. You can see the flux is melting. It's going to turn real shiny like glass, and then right after that happens, the solder's going to flow. See it go? And I'm just going to run that all up and down as it's flowing so that I get a good coverage. On this stone. Now the other thing that's going to do, the heat is going to make the sterling silver very soft, and so I'll be able to really flatten that out well. Now I need to go quench that because that thing's really hot. My water's over at my other station. Hang on, let me go quench it. I'll be right back. Okay, and by quenching it, I just dip it in some cold water. Now I have a couple pieces that didn't melt all the way, but I think that'll be okay. They'll sit up a little higher. And you can see we've got, messy mess on the front. It's ugly. But now we're going to take our base piece and put that on there. And I want to do something first before I do that. Kind of cool, huh? If you've never seen that before. I'm just hammering it to make sure that it's really flat. Sorry for the noise. All right, we're going to put some flux down on the base. Now, I want to take off some of that flux from the side. So if there's no flux, the solder's not going to flow. And ouch, I don't want my solder to flow. It's really hot because that brick is hot. Hang on. Let me get my water bottle. I don't want to put solder too far away from where the spine is going to go, because I don't want the solder to go way over there. I want it to stay pretty much on that line, and I started putting it on, and I put it too far over. So let's try that again. I just put a little water in my flux to make it a little more pasty. And let's do that again. I'm just going to go right down the spine. And And I'll be curious to see if I can get it to flow with just one torch. In the past, I believe I've always had to use two, because one just didn't put out enough heat. All right, there's that. And then we have the solder side of the spine, and I'm going to put some flux on that. And here we go. See if I can get that to go down as much as I can and stick, so that now as I'm, well, let me back up. So 2 pieces of metal will not solder if they're not touching. They have to be touching. And I have a couple spots where, you know, the spine is up just a little bit, but that's okay, because as I'm heating and I can see the solder start to flow, I can push it down with my soldering pick. Okay, so it's not too bad. It's not completely flat, but it's as flat as I'm probably going to get it. So let's try this with just one torch and see if I can get enough heat on it. I'm going to start at the bottom. And let's see what we can do here. And again, you want to heat the piece very evenly. Now, I'm not heating it all the way up because I'm going to work in stages. I need to focus all my heat here because I need that solder to flow. Okay, so I can push that down. And I'll know when the solder is flowing because I'll see it along the outside of the spine, right along where the 2 pieces meet. I'll see the silver, I'll see a flash of silver there. And it looks like it might be solid. Now we'll move up. Heat the next area. By God, it looks like it might be working. A little solder on the top, but I can file that off. Where did that go? Now, this is where I have to be careful where it gets really thin. The last time I made one of these, I kept the flame on the spine too long and it melted right through it. But it was not a big deal because I could just solder it back together. So it didn't ruin the bracelet. But I'd rather not have to fix things if I don't have to. Wow, that looked like it actually worked. Maybe that's the trick. I need to get it away from that solder station because usually I need an extra source of heat. So that looks pretty ugly, doesn't it? It's all black and some green on there, and it will shape up very nicely. Come on. It's stuck to the it's stuck to the brick, and my soldering pick is coming out of the handle. Come on. As it cools, it'll release. I'm just impatient. Wow, that worked really nice. There it goes. See, I've got a little bit of the brick on there. That'll come off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go quench this, cool it off, and then I'm going to put it in the pickle pot. And the pickle pot, the pickle it's the pH solution that people put in their swimming pools to balance out the pH. It's got citric acid in it, and that's what we use to clean up metal. And so I'll leave it in there a while and bring it out, and it'll be nice and silver. It won't be this ugly black color. So I will be right back. Okay, I had to bend that bracelet just a little bit to get it to go in the pickle pot. It wouldn't fit in straight, so I'm gonna clean up some of my soldering stuff. So the next step, when it comes out of the pickle pot, and that takes maybe 5 minutes, is to then, clean up any solder that may have. I don't know about me using a live flame. Well, there's lots of metal work you can do that you don't have to. I made this bracelet online. You can find the video. There is no flame with this. This is all hammering and texture and riveting, and so there's a lot you can do without having to use the flame. It's just limiting in what you can do, and you'll get to the point where you'll want to. And I started with just this little butane torch, and that works just fine. It just doesn't get as hot, and you have to fill it way more often. So then I went out and bought the bigger torch so I could do more with it. But you don't have to do the fire. And I'm going to be doing some mask making. I'll probably do this online. For those who didn't see it, this is my new bracelet design. And it's copper. I haven't antiqued it yet, but it's got fabric. And on this one, I used upholstery fabric. Let's see if it'll focus on that. Come on. There we go. See the pretty upholstery fabric? And then it's got copper holding it in. And then this real thin piece of copper is over a sturdier base. And then what I'll do is rivet those together. So there's a lot that you can do that you don't have to use a flame. But like I said, once you get in it, first of all, it's addictive. You'll love working with metals once you try it. Or at least I did. And you'll want the bigger flame. Thank you, Shauna. Yeah, so while I'm waiting for that to come out of the pickle, let me remind you that coming up is the sale that's being hosted by Liz, and it's a multi-vendor sale. And it's 3 days. It's the weekend of, I don't remember what the first day is. It's a Friday. The weekend of the 29th, and then it starts on that Friday. And oops. Let me get my camera back up here to where it needs to be. It starts on a Friday, and there will be multiple vendors. I will be selling 2 different spots on Friday. I know Shauna will be selling. Anybody else here selling? Wendy, are you selling in that sale? I can't remember. Yes, you are. You are. Wendy will be selling. Shauna, I don't think anybody else here is selling. But my first slot will be my home decor and jewelry stuff. And then my second slot will be my paper craft stuff. So one of the things, let me see if I can grab one. Again, while we're waiting, I'll give you guys a little bit of a preview. Hang on. So one of the things that I do, and this is like my very best-selling item ever, and that is my night lights. So here's the dragonfly. Here's a flower, and I've put the patina on it. So all of these styles come with either patina or brown. Here's a butterfly. And then my hummingbird. And I have lots more different styles. I just grabbed a couple. Those are all cut by hand. You know, I was saying earlier, for those of you who were on early in this video, oh, Ray, you're selling as well. Okay, yep. Happy Ray will be selling there as well. So I love to saw. All of these pieces are all sawed out of here by hand, just like I did the sawing out the feather. I saw every piece by hand. The difference is, this is a better one to show it. The difference is that with the feather, I could just start at the outside and saw around it. These pieces are in the middle. So what I have to do is drill a little hole in every spot where I'm going to saw, and then I have to feed my saw blade up through the hole. Oh, good, Wendy. Which one did you get? Yeah, I have to put the blade up through the hole and then saw around it. And so it takes a little while longer, but I love these. I can make night lights. In fact, I just cut out a whole stack of, these are what they start out as, just a square piece of copper. The flowers, oh, on the bronze. So you got this one, but just the copper color. The retail on these is $31, Marcy, but I sell them for $29 online because I don't have to pay Etsy fees. But they are all handmade, so I cut out the shapes, then I shape them into the round, and I use an old rolling pin since I don't bake anymore. I disassembled my rolling pin and I use that to put the copper against and then hammer it down to get that nice rounded shape. And then on the inside, I solder a clip. It's a brass clip that holds the, the nightlight face to the base. And then from there, one of the things before I hammered it flat, if I was going to keep it just the coppery color, I pressed a pattern into it. So these all have, you can see that one's like little, I don't know, scaly, pebbly. The butterfly, oh, this is one that was hammered. This is not my traditional pattern for the butterfly, but I put the pattern in first. On the ones I'm going to patina, I leave this copper solder just flat, smooth. And then after the clip is soldered on and they're hammered, then I spray it with like a vinegar-based spray to make it turn this green color. And then for both of them, once I have, and then these I patina in what's called liver of sulfur. Hey, Judy. And so once all that's done, I take them outside and I spray them with a sealant. So they are sealed. They're not going to continue to change color. And then I put a piece of vellum on the inside back to soften, because these are holes in the copper. And I tried it without, and I didn't like the fact you could see the light bulb through the shapes. So I put the vellum in there to soften it. And then I clip them on there and put them in their package. And they're nice for gifts because the back of the package shows you what it looks like lit up. And then it tells you a little bit about how it's handmade from solid copper. So it tells you a little about. So those are, and I'll have those for sale on the 29th. In fact, I have some new shapes. I have an owl that's new to my catalog this year. What else do I have? I have an owl. I have a deer. I have a bear. So I have some new ones. I also have a graduation cap, and I know I'm getting kind of really close to graduation, but I thought people might like to give it as a graduation gift. So I have one that's a graduation cap. So yeah, I have several different ones of those. And then, I have my copper cuff bracelets. I'll have necklaces. I'll have rings, lots of rings. And on my rings, sometimes people are afraid to order, over the internet because you think, what if I get it and it doesn't fit? So I guarantee all of my ring sizes. If you, buy in good faith, which, you want to get the size that fits you, and you get it and it's not quite right, you can send it back to me and I will remake the ring at no charge to you and send it out. Because I can always sell the one that I made the first time, and I want people to have a ring that they're happy with. So, and that they can wear. If it's too big or too small, you can't wear it. So I've always done that. I've only had to take in a return ring maybe 3 or 4 times in the 10 years I've been doing this. We usually get it close. I mean, good, right on. But I do offer that guarantee. So anyway, that's a little about my jewelry business, and I'll be selling that stuff again at Liz's sale. I'm not sure off the top of my head what my first hour is, but it's, I think, early afternoon. I'll be on early in the day on Friday, and I'll be selling all the jewelry and home decor. And then I'll be back later in the day to sell my inked pulp stuff. So hang on, let me check that pickle and see if it's coming along. Okay. It's not perfectly clean, but we're going to be putting those wheels on it and doing that. So it's got a little of the little green dots left, but you see if I go over that, that comes right off. So it's still got some oxidation on it, and I could leave it in the pickle. The longer you leave it, the more it's going to, shine up. But I'm going to be doing some, cleaning on this with those bristle wheels. So I don't need for it to be perfect. It will be perfect and shiny when we're done. All right, so let's go back to the bristle wheels that we used earlier. We're going to clean this thing up, and you might think, well, if you're going to have to do it again, why did you do it before? Why not just wait and do it at the end? And that's because the more you do along the way, now I only have to clean up what I've added versus trying to get, everything. And now that the piece is soldered on, it won't be as easy. And you want to, keep it clean along the way as you go. I'm going to start with the white this time. I may have to back it up to yellow, but we'll see. All right. So just like before, I'm going to, now, I don't know if you can tell. I mean, I can see it. Actually, I need to get my sanding block out. On this top spine, there are some little pieces of solder that, you remember I was heating it from the top, and I was saying that the solder will follow the heat. So that solder, if any of it came out from the side, it would jump up to the top, because that's where the heat was. And solder follows heat. So before I do the wheel, I'm just going to take the, oops, not that. I'm going to take the sanding disc and I'm going to go around. I'm just going to go across the top of that spine. I'm not going to, because the other part has the texture on it for the feathers. So we don't want to sand that because we don't want to sand the texture out. And the reason I put the texture on before I soldered is that I want that texture right up to the spine, even under the spine. And once the spine's there, I can't get the hammer that close. So I need to put the texture on first. So I'm just going to take this and run it down the spine to get that solder off. Sorry, I'm not talking, I'm concentrating. I haven't figured out how to do both at the same time yet. There we go. Look how pretty that spine looks. Got no oxidation on it, it's got no solder on it. Now I can see that right here, I got a piece of something sharp. I don't know what that is. Oh, I think it was the tip of this spine. It kind of bent over a little bit. And it's sticking out kind of sharp. So, like I said, there are very few problems that can't be fixed, just like in our paper crafting. There we go. All right, now let's go to the wheel. Thanks, Judy. This is going to be a really pretty bracelet. I really like this particular piece. And I was saying earlier, I'm going to make some in copper, and I hope to have them by the sale on the 29th, because they're obviously a lot less expensive in copper. And I hadn't done any in a while. All right, so now I'm just going to run this in the same direction as my hammer marks, because I don't want to sand them out. That's looking really good. Now I can see, can you see right here where I hammered and it's where the metal curves around here, and I've got like a little divot there because I hammered too close to the edge, which you can't really help doing that. So what I'm going to do, this is where we do any little touch up. I'm going to pull out that little tiny round file. And then I'm just going to put the file in there and file that down so it's smooth again. There we go. All right, all fixed. So this is where we do any of the little touch-ups. All right, there's that side. All right, and there she is. I can't believe, now I'm going to try to go right along this spine without messing up any of my hammer marks for the feather. I'm just going to put that in there real tight. I want to clean up right along the seam because I want it to take the patina when we go to put patina on it, and I don't know. If I have that oxidation there, it may not take. So, and I'm doing this light enough that it's not going to affect the feather marks. Just enough to get that crusty bit out of there. And again, right down the middle. Oops. All right, can you see the texture in that now? We'll go put some patina on it in a little bit and you'll see that. Now, I see one other thing that I want to touch up a little bit. Oops. And that is the very end of this, where I soldered the two pieces together. I want to file it so they're a little more like one piece, not one on top of the other. And you remember when I was saying that when you solder, you're actually joining the metal? If I solder this down enough, you won't even see a seam because, again, the two pieces are now one. The only reason you're seeing a seam now is because one is longer than the other. And that's what we do with rings too. When you make a band ring, you know, if you look on the inside, you should not be able to see the seam. If you do, then somebody hasn't done their finish work, because that should be soldered down to the point where you can't even see it. And I'll show you that here in just a minute. Again, it's all about the finish work. It's not... I gotta take this down some because I had the rib was sticking out over the actual feather. So I have to file them down into one piece now. There we go. All right, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Let me try to get it. Do you see how, like, if you look at the very end of this, you don't see a seam in there where the two pieces came together. It just looks like one solid piece. Now, you know, as you come up, and then I filed it down here, so it's all one piece as well. And then it starts to split, you know, you can see the top piece. But if you file after you solder, you can get, you know, you can get those to look like one solid piece. And again, that's because the silver actually is melded together when you solder. It's not just one piece on top of the other with like a bit of glue in the middle. It's not like that at all. Okay, now let's do the back because that's still pretty grungy looking. But we like grunge, right? Maybe you like that look. Because I had it in the pickle, that's just oxidation from the flame. Oh, and ladies, you know what I forgot to do, and I always forget this, but we'll get it fixed. With sterling silver, you want to put a stamp in it that says 0.925 because that's what identifies it as sterling, and I always forget until I get to the end of the piece. So I'm going to have to do that. And that actually may make a mark on the front of the bracelet too, in which case I'll have to, work on that and smooth it back out again. But let's see what happens. Let me get this cleaned up first. All right, let me get my stamp real quick. All right. Can you see now, Judy? I hope so. I'm getting all boxed in here with everything. All right. If I stamp just like where the feather is, if I just turn over and stamp there, it'll put a divot out here. So I'm going to stamp where the spine is and hope that there's enough metal. And if it does create a mark on the other side, then I can file that out. So I'm going to put it right here on the end and take my brass mallet. There we go. Yeah, I put a little tiny bit, but I can get that out. Do you see the little tiny oval there? But we can get that out. Hold on. And now, I don't know if you can see the 925. It's pretty little, but it says 0.925. Do y'all know what 0.925 actually means? I'm going to go over this with the red just to get it a little smoother. And then we'll shape it and put some antiquing on it and throw it in the tumbler. It'll be done. Does anybody know what 0.925 means? Oh, thanks, Judy. I'm glad you... let's see. I want to do a red. Tells you what metal it is and how pure it is. Yep. But why 0.925? Do you know? Like the significance of 925? We didn't know there was going to be a test. So 0.925 is 92.5%. If you move the decimal point and make it a percent, and that is the percentage of silver that's actually in sterling silver. So sterling silver is not 100% silver. It's got, well, you can get 0.999 silver, and that's called fine silver. And you can make jewelry out of it, but it's a pretty soft metal. Like you wouldn't want to make a ring out of 0.999 because it wouldn't hold its shape. earrings, fine. 0.999 does not tarnish. It stays silvery and it doesn't tarnish like sterling does. And the reason for that is that sterling silver has some other, it has 7.2% of other metals. It's actually an alloy. One of those other metals that's in sterling is copper. And when sterling tarnishes, it's actually the copper that's tarnishing in there. It's not the silver. There are different manufacturers that make different, that 7.2% can be different amounts of different, you can have zinc. It should never have nickel though. That's a huge no-no. No nickel, but it can have zinc, it can have, well, it definitely has copper. I don't know, I'd have to look it up. But the 0.925 tells you that it's actually sterling silver. And that's because it's 92.5% silver versus fine silver, which is 99.9%. So there's your metal trivia for the day. All right, we are just about done, ladies. Look at that. It's going to go around somebody's wrist. Now we're going to get we looked at this before. We had this before. This is the bracelet mandrel that we're going to use to, let's see if I can move this over here. We're going to use to shape this bracelet. I always start with it smaller than what I want it to be. And you'll notice as I'm bending around, like all these little things are sticking up, and that's fine. We'll take care of those. Then I take a rawhide mallet, and this is rawhide, just like the rawhide treats. Well, you shouldn't give them to your dogs. They're not good for your dogs, but it's the same stuff. And I'm just going to start hammering. Now, the hammering is doing two things. It is shaping the metal, but it's also hardening the metal. So this is your other little metals lesson for the day. And I've talked about this before, so you may already know this. But when metal heats up, well, when metal is firm, and this is for non-ferrous metals. I don't know how iron and steel and that work, but for sterling and copper and brass, the molecules are kind of together like bricks. You know, they overlap, and that's what makes it strong. And when you heat it, those molecules all sort of just scatter. And there's nothing hooked together to make it strong anymore. And that's why you can bend the metal after you've heated it. It's called annealing. Well, as you work the metal, and by hammering or bending it or doing anything, as you work the metal, it gets hard again. Those molecules line back up and they get back into the shape that you need. So by hammering this, we're going to harden this bracelet up so it won't bend out of shape when the customer wears it. And that's the thing with that I was saying with fine silver, is that it hardens some, but not like sterling does. So we're giving it shape, and I think the shape is pretty wonky right now. I don't think I'm getting it perfectly round, but I want to get all these pieces. I want to get all these pieces hammered down, and then we'll widen it up a little too, because I think it's too narrow. Actually, that's not too bad. It's not too bad. It's a little too big. We need to bring it together some. So let me bring it up higher on a smaller part of the mandrel. And no matter how small you try to hammer it, it's going to spring back open some. So What are you wowing about, Judy? That monthly subscription box or the bracelet? Okay, now that's pretty close together, so then we're going to have to the bracelet. Okay, so it's a little wonky. We want to adjust it a little. Put it back on here and just keep adjusting and hammering until okay, so this has got to come up. So there's what it's looking like. Not quite done adjusting it, but I will also adjust it a little more after it comes out of the tumbler. But that's, now let's set it down and see if it sits about even. It does. Okay. Now, hammering it on that mandrel, put some marks on the inside. So I'm just going to go, and actually on the inside of a piece, I don't try to get it super smooth on the inside. I usually use the white disc, so I'm going to grab the white one. I'm just going to go around that inside a little bit to smooth it out because, can you see the line in there, the mark in there from hammering it? So we don't want that. All right. Now that mark is gone. And it's all nice and smooth in there. Now, the last thing we're going to do before I put the patina on it. Aw, thank you. Put a little beveled edge. Remember I said that, these are sharp edges along the side here. So I'm going to just go along and at like a 45-degree angle. Let's go back here a little bit. I'm just going to do just a little bit of beveling, just to round it a little bit so it's not real sharp. And I'm going to do the outside and I'm going to do the inside. I do this on rings too, so you don't have that sharp edge on the ring. Where is my half round? See my flat file out and see my half round, so we'll just get one of the little needle files. That'll work too. Do a little beveling. Wait till you see it with the patina on it. Oh! So that bracelet would also be beautiful with green and Oh, you mean like soldered onto it? And the only way, yeah, I don't know if you're talking about like soldering something on it or making a dragonfly bracelet itself. I'm not quite sure what you, oh, soldered on? Yeah. The only way to color metal though, to keep it, with any consistency is with enamel. And you can't enamel silver, but you could do a copper. I suppose you could make a copper dragonfly and then solder that on or rivet it on. Riveting would be cool too. Well, if you want to commission one, April, I'd be happy to make you one. Or make it out of copper. That would be the other option. Is just make it out of copper. So we're just going to go around this. I think I've already gone around this part, but I'll go a little bit more. Yep. All right, now I'm going to go from the inside because that's the part that's really going to be, and for that, oh, there it is. I need my rounded. You love silver jewelry? Yeah, and my silver jewelry is all solid sterling. So, and because this has a curve to it, we can use the rounded file. That feels good. We don't want it to, hurt the person it's going on. And it doesn't need much. But yeah, April, everything is sterling that I make, so it truly will last a lifetime. I guarantee all of my work. If anything ever goes wrong with it, I don't care if it's 5 years old, as long as it wasn't, obviously, mangled by the user. If something goes wrong with any of my products, I always fix it. And I haven't had to, but I would. The worst thing I did have one. I had a spinner ring that I had made, and one of the little spinners around the solid sterling piece, one of the little spinners had broken, and I think she probably hit it on something or whatever. But
hello.
Tyler,
did you answer me?
I did. I'm actually on
Okay.
I'm on a live stream, hon. I'll call you back in a little bit.
All right. Bye.
Okay, bye. Sorry about that, guys. That was my son. I thought I sent him to voicemail, and I actually answered the phone. So I just fixed it, and that was that. And she had a fixed ring. So yeah, if you buy something silver, it will last you a lifetime. Okay, there we go. Now, let me get my antiquing solution. I'm not seeing it, you guys. Hang on. I always keep it in the same spot, and it's not there. So, Oh, there it is. It's over here on this bench where it's not supposed to be. All right. So I use what's called silver black, and it basically turns silver black. And I keep it in a little plastic bag because the fumes even will, it's pretty potent stuff. So let me get a little paintbrush. How did you learn the process of metalworking? Well, it's a combination of things, April. A lot of it is self-taught through YouTube videos and books. I have taken some classes along the way with various people. I used to go to a metals retreat, and I used to learn a lot there from the ladies there. What else? Oh, and Facebook groups. The Facebook groups around metalwork and jewelry making are awesome. If I ever have a question or can't figure something out, how to do something, or if I'm having a problem with something and I need to find an answer to fix it, the Facebook groups are awesome. And because it's worldwide, and I'll get answers within, minutes. I'll start getting answers. So can you guys see this? We're turning this completely black right now. But, woof, I just breathed some in. That's nasty, very toxic stuff. All right, and I probably should be wearing gloves to do this, but I usually don't. I don't think it's great for your skin, but I will go wash my hands as soon as I'm done with this. So April, I've just, just stuff that I've picked up. I don't have really formal training. There are some people that, went to school to learn this kind of stuff. I don't have that. A lot of it's trial and error. Okay. So that is done. Let me go rinse this brush, rinse off the bracelet, and wash my hands real quick, and then we'll go to the next step. Now, some people enjoy the black look of sterling silver. And, some people make their jewelry and leave it this black color with maybe just a few silver highlights. I don't do that with mine, but I've seen it, and it's pretty. I just think if you're going to have sterling silver, it might as well look silver because you're paying for sterling. All right. These zip back up so we don't get any fumes tarnishing our metal. Okay. Now what we're going to do, and this is going to make my hands black. And so I am going to put on gloves for this part. Because what I'm going to do is take some 4/0, the finest steel wool you can get, and I'm going to start buffing this bracelet to take off a lot of that silver black and only leave it where I want it. And as that silver black comes off, it turns my hands blue. Poo. That's all right. Let me get some steel wool. Some steel wool and a new glove, since I tore the last one. So we're going to buff it, and then it's not going to be quite shiny enough, so then I put it in the tumbler for a while, and that's what will shine it up. So I'm just taking my steel wool. Whoops, I hit my camera. It's flopping all over the place. Oh, you guys are going in circles, aren't you? I'm tightening. I'm tightening up my camera and it's taking you guys on a ride. All right, so here's the bracelet, and I'm just going to start going over it. The steel wool will not scratch the bracelet, but it will buff off some of that silver black. And so you see what you're getting. You can see the texture of the feathers now. Let me see if I can get that to focus a little better. There you go. You see the texture of the feathers where I hammered. And when I put it in the tumbler, a little more of that black, it'll come out shinier. Some more of that silver black will come off. Not all of it, not down in the crevices, but it'll lighten up some. But that spine on there gives a really nice contrast because there's no texture in it. It also gives the bracelet some good strength. Like I can't really, that's pretty tight now. It is adjustable. I mean, you can bend it a little bit, but not a lot. It's not flimsy. All right. So that is the bracelet, now that we've got it all textured. Now on the inside for the silver black, because there's no texture and I don't have to worry about taking too much out of creases, I'm just going to go through with my, and it would take me too long to try to do it with the steel wool, so I'm just going to all right. Now I'm going to flip this light up so it's not as bright here, so maybe we can see the bracelet a little better. I've got another, there we go. There we go. So can you see that? Oh, I see a little spot there. I need to buff out a little bit more. But that's it. And that's what it looks like on the... Come on. Focus for me. Come on. There we go. So that's it. That's the bracelet. Now, I'm going to put it in the tumbler for a little bit, and I'm not going to stay on the live while I do that because it'll be 10-15 minutes, and I need to get ready to go to my radiation appointment. But when it comes out, it's going to just be a little bit shinier is all. This is basically what it's going to look like. That will just, the parts that are silver, showing silver, will just get a little bit shinier in the tumbler. So that is the making of, and we did this in 3 hours and 5 minutes. We went from a piece of sheet metal, which was this, to this. So pretty cool. Yep. Oh, I didn't get all the silver out of the middle here. All this black. Now on my copper pieces, I seal them because I don't, because copper tarnishes. Now sterling will tarnish too, but not as bad. I don't seal my, and plus the other reason I seal my copper pieces is so that it doesn't turn anybody's skin green. So any of my copper jewelry will not turn your skin because I do seal it. So that was the making of a feather cuff, sterling silver feather cuff. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and go get myself cleaned up and ready to go for my treatment. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys are wonderful. Let's see if I have any other questions. I see a lot of gorgeous and stunning. Well, Marcy, maybe not one of the silver ones, but the copper you might. And they're pretty as well. It's not silver, but they're pretty as well. So anyway, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and end this live. I appreciate you guys joining me and hanging out. And oh, there's that 925 stamp if you can see it in there. Let's see. I don't know if you can see it. You can see that dark. So the silver black highlighted that 925 as well. All right, guys, you have a wonderful, wonderful day. How is the treatment going? Oh, it's going really well. I don't have any. Oh, thanks, Shauna. Yeah, do please like. I don't have any side effects so far. And the only side effects that may possibly happen are feeling sunburn where they're treating me, which I don't have yet, and then feeling tired, which he said that won't come until probably the second week or so. So everything's going just fine right now. I have no side effects. I have nothing. And it takes 10 minutes when I get in there. It's like getting an x-ray. So it's all good. And yes, reminder, I do have a sale tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. I have some amazing things and napkins. I have new napkins that we haven't seen before. I found a source, and so that'll be fun. So hopefully y'all can make it at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for everything, and I will see you later. Bye.